hundreds of seaweeds, but you have to taste them all before you know which one are the best.
Well then, bon appetit. Hello and welcome to Euromaxx. I'm Evelyn Sharma and I'm glad you could join us. Later on, we'll be showing you how seaweed can be turned into a delicious dessert. But first, here is what else we have lined up for you. Miniature art on the tip of a pencil. And a visit to Europe's iciest music festival. But first, we go to Venice, Italy, where people are celebrating one of the world's most beautiful carnivals. A mask like this one is a small part of a magnificent costume, which has a long tradition there. So it's hard to believe that the most beautiful costumes for the Venetian Carnival come from Germany. Horst Rack has already won first prize several times at the competition for best costume at Venice. And this year, he is back with new ones.
Carnival in Venice is both elegant and mysterious. It's the highlight of the year for Horst Rack and Jochen Schlüter.
Sieht gut aus.
In their hotel room, the couple makes sure their fragile costumes survive the trip unharmed. They hope to win the official costume competition again this year. Rack designed the costumes and then spent hours making them.
I think it's the most beautiful one you've ever made for me.
Ist das toll. Das Ganze steht bei mir unter den
The main theme for me this year was the children of light.
Und deswegen
And that's why I used a lot of lights, including fiber optic lights.
Glasfaserlampen.
It all starts in the small town of Enger in northwestern Germany. It often takes years for an idea to become a finished design.
Und da soll ein Goldschmuck.
Would you wear that for me?
Ja, das ziehe ich an.
Ja, herzlich
Welcome to our
willkommen
castle
in unserem
room.
kleinen
Looks like something out of the 18th century, but it's also my studio.
Aber es ist eben auch mein Arbeitszimmer für die Kostüme.
The judges in Venice award points for creative design, extensive detail and craftsmanship.
Das Kreative,
I'm a creative person by nature, and I'm at my best when I'm doing this. I have to express all this creativity. It just comes pouring out.
einfach raus.
The two of them first took part in the Venice competition 10 years ago and won first place.
Und da sind wir noch mal.
They've taken the top spot another 4 times since then. Rack is a goldsmith by profession. He designs and makes the costumes in his spare time.
Da, in jede
I'll
Ecke
put
kommt
one in
eins.
every corner. It's the Venice Carnival, after all.
Da darf es ruhig ein Pfund mehr sein.
He pays close attention to the fabrics and other materials. The plastic placemat is turned into a headdress.
Das Ganze soll
The whole thing should look like a Marie Antoinette hairstyle, but made of glass.
aber eben auch als
I bought some of the materials at hardware stores and discount stores.
teilweise im Baumarkt im
Simple stuff, really.
Billigshop zu finden. Ganz einfache Dinge.
Ich finde es einfach toll.
I think it's great that the whole product, from design to completion, is done by one person.
Aus einer
Fabulous.
Person heraus. Das finde ich halt einfach.
And I enjoy wearing these costumes because they're so
trage die Sachen
beautiful.
einfach gerne, weil ich sie einfach super schön finde.
Back in Venice, the couple are just about to make their first public appearance with their new costumes.
Ihnen reicht das schon, glaube ich wohl. Möchtest du so sitzen? Ich bin natürlich gespannt und
I'm excited, and I'm curious to see what sort of reaction we get,
so als Reaktion.
and if we can move around okay.
Ja, ob wir halt so uns auch ganz gut bewegen können.
The very first door presents a bit of a challenge. And it's not easy to walk around on the city streets. Jochen's costume weighs around 10 kilos, but the first reactions seem positive.
Wir sind ganz zufrieden.
We're quite
Ja, es ist
pleased.
natürlich anstrengend.
but it's tough to get through alleys, upstairs, and across bridges. The headdress is pretty heavy. But now we know where the problems are, and we can fix them.
They arrive at St. Mark's Square. This is where the costume competition will take place. There are positive reactions from the crowd.
Perfect! The costumes are so elaborate and so carefully put together. And so many people seem to be involved in it. It's just, I've never seen anything like it anywhere else. It's amazing.
They are so cool, it's amazing, like superstar.
But the highlight of the evening will come after sunset, when Horst Trag's costumes really come into their own. And it seems they stand a good chance of winning the competition again this year.
So, what do you think of Horst Trag's costumes? Would you give him first prize? You can vote on Facebook. For our next report, you'll have to look very closely. In fact, you may need a magnifying glass to see Salavat Fidai's works of art, because they're so tiny. The Russian artist is a big fan of Game of Thrones, and we found out how the US TV series inspired a new miniature work of art.
For 46-year-old Salavat Fidai, the tips of pencils serve a totally new purpose. Instead of drawing with them, the Russian artist turns them into miniature works of art. His raw material is the graphite at their core. Today, he's carving a wolf from the famous US series Game of Thrones. Fidai has a studio in his apartment in the Russian city of Ufa. He doesn't need much space. His sculptures are tiny, usually between 2 and 5 millimeters. The work requires both concentration and precision.
I control my breathing, and I literally work on the sculptures in between heartbeats. Under the microscope, you can see how each heartbeat moves the blade. That's why this work feels like meditation to me.
Game of Thrones often inspires the artist. 2 years ago, he dedicated a whole exhibition with 30 sculptures to the series. Now he's preparing the next one.
The work of the show's artists and its costume and prop designers is inspiring and wonderful. I'm a huge fan of the series, and as a fan, I like using the series in my work.
Salavat Fidai has specialized almost entirely in pencil miniatures since 2014. He buys his materials at an art supply store in town.
Pencil graphite is both malleable and hard. That's why you can do a lot with it. My dream is for graphite eventually to be taken as seriously as a material for sculpting as marble, bronze, or clay are, for example.
Fidai's pencils have gained him a lot of attention. He's based near the Ural Mountains in a city with a population of more than 1 million. But his miniature universe is regularly on show at museums around the world. And most of his clients aren't in Russia. They're in the US, Australia, and Europe.
I think if Van Gogh had an Instagram account, he would have been famous during his lifetime. The internet is the decisive factor here. It's not important where you are now, where you live. Social networks can make you popular around the world.
Salavat Fidai has more than 760,000 followers on Instagram. The making of videos for his sculptures are especially popular. Salavat Fidai didn't become an artist straight away. After studying to become a lawyer, he worked for more than 2 decades before he quit office life. He's been making a living solely from art since 2014. His miniatures sell for around €1,000. Each sculpture takes at least 8 to 12 hours to complete, but usually it takes several days. And sometimes, after hours and hours of work, the pencil lead can split at the last moment. Even after more than 400 carved pencils, the miniatures just keep drawing him back in.
This tiny world is like its own universe to me. The more I magnify it, the more interesting the structure of the material and the surface become for me. It all looks totally different under the microscope, and that's a challenge for me. Can I really manage to create even more detail on such a small object?
Salavat Fidai has created a miniature universe with his pencil art and has carved out his own small niche in the international art world.
Now, let's listen to this. Can you guess what it is? That was music played on instruments made of ice. Sounds like those can be heard once a year at Norway's Ice Music Festival, which has just taken place for the 14th time. And this time our reporter Henrik Welling was there. Henrik is constantly on the road for us to explore the most extreme and unusual places around the continent. This time he chose Europe's coolest music festival.
The sound of ice. All the instruments here are made entirely of ice. This is Europe's coolest and probably most remote music festival. Euromaxx reporter Henrik Welling has traveled to Venice. There are no roads or cars here, just a railway station, a few vacation homes, and lots of ice and snow. Venice lies in southern Norway at an altitude of 1,222 meters. It's about halfway between Bergen and Oslo. The village, surrounded by glaciers, ice, and snow, may seem like an unusual venue for a music festival. Last year, temperatures dropped to minus 27 degrees Celsius. The festival was the brainchild of Terje Isungset. In the late 1990s, he discovered the many kinds of sounds that ice can make, quite by accident.
I just fell in love with it because it sounded so fantastic, and it also looked really nice. So I thought it would be really nice to have a festival to invite lots of creative people and see what we can do with ice and snow. And having only one rule, everyone has to deal with ice and snow.
There's certainly no shortage of ice here. In December, the festival organizers begin sawing blocks of ice out of a frozen lake. Later, they're carved into instruments. During the winter, they use a total of 9 tons of ice. It has different qualities at different spots on the lake.
There are several different types. It depends on how the water is floating when it freezes in. That's important for the sound. It's clear and not too many air bubbles. So I think we can get some good sound for the instruments.
It doesn't take the musicians long to make their instruments. Here, Terje is working on what will become part of a marimba.
Something like this. This tone, okay, and I want a higher pitch. So.
Oh. Amazing.
Somehow you can make all kinds of instruments, but I think the most interesting thing is to try to make kind of fantasy instruments also, or instruments that are not actually copies of existing instruments.
Henrik wants to try out this particular instrument, a kind of ice saxophone, created by Norwegian jazz musician Kjetil Mørstad. It was hard to make, and it's even harder to play.
It's so hard. It's so hard. But at least one sound. I got one sound, right?
You get this in.
This is how it's supposed to sound. There are a total of 8 concerts in Venice, and music fans come from around the world to see them.
kind of like to realize our dream after several years.
I'm from Italy.
From Italy?
Yes.
And you came all the way to Norway for the music?
All the way for this festival.
Really?
Yes, because I thought it was something amazing, incredible.
The audience take their seats outside, and it's cold. So the concerts rarely last more than 45 minutes. Whether percussion or wind instruments, it's often the softer notes that the listeners like best. After 3 days at Norway's Ice Music Festival, Henrik Velling heads back home. But the harmonious sights and sounds of the countryside and the ice music remain with him.
You can find out more about Hendrik's Europe to the Max reports if you go to youtube.com/DW Euromaxx. These pictures look like real works of art, but in fact, they're a show of nature taking place in the sky. Flocks of birds and their changing formations fascinate the Spanish photographer Xavi Bo, and his pictures give us a completely new take on the hidden beauty of birds in flight.
Images that resemble a tornado taken over the La Terreta Valley in Catalonia. They show a flock of airborne vultures that live south of the Pyrenees. They were captured by Spanish photographer Xavi Bo.
Beautiful.
Fascinating.
Look,
it's really beautiful.
ahora ahí está súper bonito.
Now they're gathering to go into a circling motion.
Concéntricamente.
To capture that motion, Xavi Bo has to take dozens of exposures per second.
I wasn't trying to take just ordinary pictures of vultures, like we've all seen before. I wanted to show another side of nature's beauty, a beauty that's created by patterns of movement.
The results of his work resemble calligraphic artworks that portray birds in flight. These patterns are made by cormorants taking off. This is the flight path of a herring gull. And this, the motion of fulmars and puffins in Iceland. The former fashion photographer lives in Barcelona. He has devoted 8 years to his photo project titled Ornithographies, from the Greek words for birds and for writing. His photographs sell worldwide.
These patterns have always been invisible to us. Our perception is limited to the moment. What we see here is a few seconds compressed into a single image, as if we could see those seconds as a single moment. That's not possible, except with this technology.
To create one image, he meticulously places hundreds of photos on top of one another. They're shot in rapid succession, following the principle of the chronophotograph, a process developed in the mid-19th century to study motion sequences. In 1878, English photographer Edward Muybridge used it to show that a galloping horse actually leaves the ground for a few milliseconds. Individual birds can hardly be identified in Xavi Bo's images.
What's important is the pattern of motion. Some people see a DNA strand, a wire, or computer graphics. And that's what interests me. What do people see when they view an image like this for the first time?
When Bo was a child, he'd go birdwatching with his grandfather. He's been fascinated with birds ever since. And he doesn't have to travel far to find his motifs. He says birds can be found everywhere, for example, in this park in Barcelona.
Right now, we're surrounded by birds that are making all kinds of different sounds. But we're always so wrapped up in ourselves that we don't notice. I want to appeal to people's curiosity, so they look up for a change, listen, and enjoy all this beauty.
With the help of high-speed photography, Xavi Bo condenses time and makes the invisible visible.
Now, algae are said to be one of the top food trends for 2019. And while some people might not like the idea of eating seaweed, they might think again if they sample some of the dishes prepared by star chef Edwin Winke.
Algae oil.
The taste of the sea. A plate adorned with algae and mussels. Edwin Winke's cuisine is based on local maritime ingredients.
A life without the sea and life without cooking.
And all of the produce is hand-picked by Winke. Today, Winke and his friend Jan Krause are visiting the North Sea coast in the Netherlands. Winke is the only person in this region who holds an official permit to harvest the algae. Winke samples everything immediately.
So this is Japanese berry seaweed. We dry it, and when it's dry, it's even more intense. So it's even more tasting like the sea, like the seaside. So this is this is not my favorite, but this is really creative weed.
Winke puts his creative skills to good use at his restaurant, the Kromme Watergang, located right near the shore.
So we start with this, with all the different kinds of seaweed. And this is the Rolls Royce between the algae. This is codium. When you make like something like oil or something from this, it tastes like white truffle. We don't use truffles in the kitchen, but this is white truffle.
All the food that Winke prepares is cooked with salt water from the North Sea. Filtered and boiled, of course, to kill off any bacteria.
You see what happens? See? Look like this. The water is reduced, the salt in the water is on the potato, you see? And then you have this salty potato. Great, eh? And so simple.
The menu features mostly fish and shellfish, and Winke uses seaweed as other chefs would use vegetables.
My signature is the seawater. So people come here to taste the sea, to experience the sea. When you walk around here, you smell the sea, and you want to have this on your plate.
Mussels are a favorite item on the menu. Winke serves about 20 different varieties, depending on the season.
The beautiful thing about it is they all have their own taste. One of them is sweet, one of them has a bit sour, so they have all those different kinds of tastes. Then we have the red horn. It's bringing another extra dimension on the shells. There are like hundreds of seaweeds, but you have to taste them all before you know which one are the best. And then you have to test them all. So you have to cook them, you have to bake them, you have to make powder of it, you have to eat it raw if you want. Huh? So it took us a long time.
Winke has finally developed a sweet and salty dessert. He roasts wakame seaweed and combines it with baked chocolate mousse, red bean paste and buckwheat. The dishes remind you of the raw North Sea coast.
This is sesame seed. I just went back from Japan, so it's a bit Japanese influence.
For the last 7 years running, Winke's restaurant has been awarded 2 Michelin stars for its creative combinations of unusual ingredients.
It's very important that people come in here, and when they leave the table, they have to be fit. You don't have to be tired. We try to make it as clear as possible and as healthy as possible. So we don't use sugar in our dishes also, like the Japanese, they don't use sugar. We use honey, we have our own bees in the gardens, and we try to make our kitchen as light as possible. and as healthy as possible, because it's very important.
Edwin Vinke has made a name for himself as a chef who prepares fresh North Sea ingredients served in innovative combinations.
You can find more food topics and many other reports on our Facebook page and our website. Also, don't forget our current draw, where you could win an exclusive Euromaxx wristwatch. Good luck! Hope you can join us again next week. Until then, take care and bye-bye.